So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Was in Mario Universe, so let's start the series. The skies above the Mushroom Kingdom were dark, but not because of the day giving way to night, but because of might and magic most dark and powerful. The Mushroom Palace was damaged and smoking in several places as guards, soldiers, and knights fought with their mortal enemies, the Gamba and Koopa troops. The villagers in the town within the palace's view had been scattered across the kingdom for their own safety. Despite the king of the Koopa kingdom saying that none would be harmed, Princess Peach wasn't going to take that chance, especially with the alliance of darkness that had attacked her palace not even a day ago. 1. The Princess Toadstool, or Peach as she was known to by her friends, was a beautiful young woman at the mere age of 26, with a slender body frame with a large chest that was mostly always covered by her signature pink dress. Instead today she wore a pink bodysuit with silver armor over it, and the mushroom sword as her weapon of choice in this battle for her kingdom. Raising her sword, the normally kind princess let out a war cry as she flew at her enemy, intent on sending them away from her home. Her enemy smirked at her as she raised a single scale-covered arm, before twisting her body with a speed and sending her flying with a swing of her long tail. Crashing into a pile of rubble, Peach pushed the rubble off her, revealing her damaged armor and broken sword. Discarding the sword, she summoned her ever-faithful umbrella. In the open field not far from the entrance of the castle, another battle was raging. This time a young woman who was similar to Peach in appearance and body preparations was leading the charge, striking at any enemy with her powerful attacks. But the attacks phased through her enemy, who just laughed at her, before grabbing her and teleporting her into the sky before dropping her where Princess Peach was fighting. Above her head, a battle just as fierce as hers was raging. 3 streaks of light flow across the sky, occasionally crashing into each other, before backing off. The red and green lights battled a yellow-orange light that seemed to be more than a match for them. The orange and green lights that hovered in the air were the brothers Mario, Luigi Mario, and Mario J. Mario. The twins brothers looked quite similar except for the fact that Mario was shorter than Luigi by a good 3 inches, standing at 5 feet 9 inches. Both had brown hair that was cut short and blue eyes. The only difference was that Luigi was often called Slim Thug because of his slender appearance, while Mario was more thick in the middle section too. Both were running on fumes as they had never faced an enemy as powerful as the one before them. Sure, they had battled him before on different occasions. A time or two they won and sometimes they lost, but it had never crossed their mind that their enemy was more powerful than them, especially as he sometimes lost to Mario, making them think that the duo was stronger than him. Clearly, they were wrong on all fronts. The orange blur vanished before appearing between the duo, before he did a split leg kick that sent the duo to the ground. As the heroes of the Mushroom Kingdom and Sarasaland respectively crashed next to their princesses in the courtyard, the lights faded from their forms as Peach and Daisy ran up to the 2 brave plumbers turned warriors. The orange light descended from the sky and landed on the rocks before the courtyard, before turning into a man who was no older than they were. In another life, he could have been Peach's brother with how similar they looked. Spiky sun-kissed blonde hair, blue eyes that were cold to the appearance, wearing a black pair of pants, an orange coat that was zipped up with a spiral symbol on the back and black with 3 chains across the front of it, loose long sleeves, black gloves, black boots, and finally a black staff in his right hand with 3 floating orbs around it, and a 3-pronged kunai sword. The sword vanished into thin air as the staff turned into 6 orbs and turned into a necklace. The warrior king of the Koopa Kingdom sat, while his dragon and Phantasam queens took their place at the side of their lover/king. Enough! Yelled Peach, walking in front of the others as Daisy used healing magic on her friends. Stop this madness, Naruto. What good will destroying the kingdoms do? Destroy. I have no desire to destroy. For the longest time, you put Bowsette and Basette down as if they were nothing. You people from the Mushroom Kingdom to New Donk City treated those of the Koopa Kingdom as second-class citizens. I'm the harbinger of peace. Would it be better if all of the worlds was under one banner? Said Naruto. You're nothing but a demon in human form, yelled Daisy. The Queen of Phantasm glared at Daisy. Watch your mouth, you little wench, or I'll cut out your filthy tongue. Naruto held up his hand, silencing the ghost woman. Maybe, but my results speak for themselves. The continent of Mobius is at peace. The Resistance, Eggman Empire, and the Knuckles clan are at peace finally. A continent famous for its constant civil wars. I ended those wars by uniting the people under my banner, said Naruto. Luigi slowly rose to his fight, That war ended in countless deaths and the enslavement of its people to the Egg Empress and her robot army, yelled the green-themed player 2. Naruto shrugged. Sacrifices were inevitable. Ivara Eggman pledged not only her kingdom but herself to me. All we want is peace for our people. I gave you a choice. Join as a member state of the new Koopa Empire, be a subservient state, or face subjugation through force. All of those meant that we would lose independence, yelled Daisy. But you would have prospered, said Naruto. Mario rose and reached deep inside of himself, drawing out as much power as he could. His blue jean overall once again turned white. His hat turned white and he got into a fighting stance. We won't give up. Not now, not ever, yelled Mario. Then you leave us no choice. I will do what I must to bring peace to this world, said Naruto as he looked at Peach. Even if I have to kill you, my beautiful princess, said Naruto as he stood up and charged at the group with his queens behind him. The heroes charged back intent on ending this fight. The lands of the Koopa and Gamba were basically barren wasteland, centered around a massive volcano. Spilling from said volcano were rivers of lava. Thanks to the abundant amount of sulfur and ash, the skies were almost always dark. A fleet of airships and an armada of tanks were all over the place, flying in formation. While Koopa were creatures that mostly lived underground, above the grounds was the massive fortress castle of the Koopa Kingdom. The Koopa Kingdom was easily one of the strongest military powers in the world, with only the Eggman Empire rivaling them in strength. Currently, the current queen of the entire kingdom was walking down the hallway away from her throne room. Prime Minister Kamek, the various tribal representatives, and her top military advisors, all telling her that she needed to invade another country to keep other countries in fear of the Koopa, that and finding a mate. The queen of the Koopa was named Bowsette, after her father and last king of the Koopa Kingdom, Bowser. Bowsette was easily one of the most beautiful women in the world. In fact, she rivaled the princesses of the Mushroom Kingdom. Bowsette stood tall, taller than most girls or even women at the age of 14, standing at nearly 6 feet 2 inches with muscular arms and legs that screamed she could crush you like a grape. A full six-pack, large DD cup breasts, green eyes, large horns, fangs, brown skin, and long red hair that was pulled into a ponytail, and finally a small green spiked shell on her lower back that she could grow and shrink, or even remove at will, and a 6-foot-long orange tail wearing a spiked collar with matching armbands and bracelets, black bishop-length gloves, and a black strapless leotard that left the top half of her breasts and cleavage exposed to the world with a green gem, a half-skirt, thigh-high black boots with a 2-inch heel. As beautiful as she was, her attitude was quite a different matter. She was rude, abrasive, arrogant, and as strong as she was a bit of an idiot. Or at least that's what people from the other countries thought about her. She had her kind moments, but mostly she was rude and abrasive, and quite lonely. She did consider Brett and Champette her friends, but she rarely got to hang out with them. She was tired of thinking of ways to invade, kidnap, or make treaties with Sarasaland, the Mushroom Kingdom, the city-state of New Donk City, or the countries and various factions on the continent of Mobius. In fact, the only people she actually had any type of alliance with were Ivara, Eggman, or Brett. Growling, her mind once again went to the fact that Kank wanted her to mate with one of the stronger Koopa or Gamba males. The Koopa came in 3 categories: the small forms, the monster forms, and the humanoid or ER forms, aka evolved reptilian forms. Her grandfather had been an ER, while her father had been a monster form. She herself was an EV form, but considering that 1 out of every 10,000 Koopa and Goombas were Yars, it was hard to find those similar to herself. While the Koopa and Goomba as a whole made one of the strongest militaries in the world, they were actually quite clannish in nature. All over the Koopa Kingdom, there were around 2,000 clans that formed 200 tribes. It was only through her lineage and power that all those tribes listened, might be made right in the Koopa Kingdom. The fact that the Bowser clan/tribe had ruled for 3 generations spanning 200 years was a damned miracle. Her chances of staying on top were slim, since she was the first female ruler of the Koopa Empire in well over 3,000 years. 1. Shaking her head, her thoughts went back to the marriage at hand. Female Koopa and Goombas were not rare, but plenty uncommon. In the dozen or so eggs that a female Koopa/Gamba laid, only one would be female, and the chances of it being a monster female were even slimmer. Yars tended to have live births of single children. She herself was live birth, but even rarer, she was an MER. It made her an extremely valuable political and military tool, which brought us back to her current state. Kank had brought her applications for no less than 2,000 ER's monsters, and SFS, all with strong ties and lineage, none who caught her attention, too. Taking a breath, she walked into her rose garden, the only place in the entire Koopa kingdom that had life, a gift from Ivara for her 12th birthday. It was forbidden for anyone but her to set foot in this place. She walked over to the small lake that was at the center. She smiled as she undressed, freeing her tough yet beautiful skin from the confines of her favorite black leather leotard, removed her crown, and undid the tie, keeping her normally neatly tied hair into a messy mane that reached just above her tail. All in all, a desirable female. She sat her clothes underneath a tree and waded into the cool waters of the lake. She shivered at the first touch. Thanks to the volcano, a lot of the water of the Koopa kingdom was underworld and mostly free of any harmful bacteria or germs. This was one of the few places that calmed her rage. Bowsette lay backward and began to float, just allowing the cool water to caress her skin. When she was closer to the middle of the lake, she took a breath and dived into the water. While the lake only went 100 feet deep, it was still quite fun to dive and just stay underwater for a time. She stayed under for about 20 minutes before she touched the very bottom and shot up to the surface. Once she broke the surface of the water, she took a breath of air, allowing its sweetness to fill her and expand her lungs. "Lady Bowsette," came a voice from the edge of the lake where her clothes were. She looked in the direction her voice was called from and frowned. Standing there was an Koopa, only unlike her. He was of the shorter variety, at only 5 feet 5 inches, the tan skin that seemed to be the norm among the Koopa, a blue wizard's robe with a white collar and sleeves, a Koopa magic staff, and glasses. Growling in the back of her throat at the intrusion into her private sanctuary, she took her time as she swam to Kamak and rose out the water, something that no doubt irritated the mage. She saw the lust that sprang up in his eyes. She honestly didn't give two damns about him looking. Let him look. He was not foolish enough to touch her intimately. While he was magically powerful and was the advisor to her father, he was nowhere near as strong as her father, and she had killed him when she was 10. She grabbed her leotard and put it on. The water made the leather even tighter on her skin than it normally was. "What do you want, Kamak?" asked Bowsette as she pulled on a single boot. "My lady, we have much to discuss. Several tribes, allied tribes at that, as well as rival tribes, await your choice of mate, as well as when we will next invade the Mushroom Kingdom," said Kamak. Bowsette looked at him. "The tribes and council already know my stance on mating. Only someone who is as strong as me will be my mate. Last I checked, no one. Not even the Yars are stronger than my father, and he was a monster. As far as an invasion goes, that is not going to happen. Thanks to international treaties, we can't attack during a year of harmonic games," said Bowsette. Kamak narrowed his eyes behind his glasses. "Those games won't take place for another 6 months. While all-out war isn't something we can do, we can still coordinate a month-long skirmish with the army of the Mushroom Kingdom in the Great Plains," said Kamak. Bowsette just hummed. For a skirmish to take place in the Great Plains between their forces was a lot of work. It would take weeks of careful coordination. A third party examining the weapons to make sure that they would only injure and not kill, not to mention the monetary split for such an event. Oh, the headache. Boom! Splash! Bowsette and Kamak turned, Kamak raising his staff, making it glow, while Bowsette's hands caught fire as flames licked the edges of her mouth. The dinosaur queen released the hold of her mana as she saw what landed in the lake. Rushing over, she jumped into the water and swam over, before grabbing the body that landed there. Before grabbing him and dragging him to the edge of the water, she noticed that it was a boy around her age. His hair was the same color as Peach's hair, with soft skin that was just a shade or two darker than Peach's. She couldn't see his eyes as they were closed, but he had 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek. His body was riddled with wounds, fresh from a battle no doubt. The most obvious was a fist-shaped size hole near his heart. She could see white, indicating bone at the deepest part of the wound, but it was slowly knitting itself together. Regeneration? No, it was happening. He wore an orange jacket, a black shirt, and a pair of tiger-striped pants. His eyes shot open, revealing sapphire blue, as he gasped, "Watashi wa anata anai shippai shimashita, Sakura-chan, fofeba watashi," before he passed out again. 3. "He's alive," Bowsette whispered to herself in amazement. "Kamak, he needs to be healed now." Kamak, while reluctant to do as his queen told him, waved his hands and began to heal the boy. Once he was stable and out of danger of immediate death, Kamak sent out a psychic message to nearby guards. Several minutes later, a number of guards entered along with healing shaman. While Kamak healed him, Bowsette wondered to herself what kind of battle he had been in to accumulate such injuries. Bowsette smiled a wide, fawn-filled grin at the prone body as he was taken away. You'd better not die, little man. You are much too interesting to die from such small injuries. Bowsette, Queen of the Koopa Kingdom, has her eyes on you. The Council of the Koopa Kingdom was made up of tribal representatives, some of the strongest Koopa and Goomba in all of the Koopa Kingdom. Only the tribal chiefs and elders. Considering that the tribes fought over resources and territory like cats and dogs, half of the time when the council were together, they argued over territory. The other time they argued for fighting and invading other territories, specifically the Mushroom Kingdom and Sarasaland. There was a story there about how the people of the two kingdoms teamed up to drive the Koopa and the Gamba out of their rightful ancestral lands. However, that was a few thousand years ago, and the Koopa had adapted well to their new lands. Honestly, it was just in their nature to want to fight. She couldn't be bothered to remember thousands of years of problems. Is something wrong, Bosie? You don't seem to be enjoying yourself as much as normal, asked a sweet voice from her side, with a bit of a metallic ting to it. Bowsette looked from her left eye while closing the right. Standing next to her was a bodyguard and pet, Bushi. Buchi was once a regular chomp several years ago, but her father and Kamak performed alchemy and magic experiences on it, trying to turn it into a monster Koopa/chomp hybrid. That experiment failed and somehow turned it into a girl. They tried to replicate the experiment but to no success. A girl who they gave to Bowsette as her pet. Buchi was a short stack if there ever was one, standing at only 4 feet 10 inches with large C-cup breasts, and a tiny body that Bowsette had used to enact some of her more base desires. Her skin was a pale white as if nice tan, black eyes and a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth that were silver in color, jet black hair with a knife bob cut. Wearing a black short-sleeve-made uniform that stopped at mid-thigh with downward spikes protruding from the bottom and puffy sleeves with a boob window, bicep-length gloves, black high heels with red bottom, and the stiletto heel was bladed and so sharp you could cut with its shadow, black see-through fishnets that were ripped in several places, 2 thick metal bracelets on her wrists with 3 chain segments, and a thick metal choker on her neck with a chain that hung just between her breasts. Buchi was a kind girl, and one of the few reasons that people dared not challenge besides Bowsette's own formidable strength was that Buchi was one of the kingdom's strongest fighters, and she is very protective of her mistress. Everything is fine, my pet, my mind is just on the boy that appeared a week ago, said Bowsette 2-3. That was only half true, as she had been ignoring the meeting. Over the last 7 days, the shaman and doctors of the kingdom had looked after the boy in a secured room in the palace. The reports that she had gotten had been interesting, to say the least. He wasn't a normal human by any means. While there were several people who didn't have magic, the few who did were powerful. From the reports that she got, he had more than the circulatory, nervous, and blood vessel systems that a normal human had. He also had a pathway of some kind that allowed strange energy to spiral around his body. It was a rich energy that rivaled the power of those blessed as the 7-star children Karmak energy. The energy that she currently was studying, as she was a star child, and so was Peach as far as she knew. Buchi smiled before she crawled into Bowsette's lap, managing to rub her knee against Bowsette's crotch, making her grunt in pleasure. Now it makes sense. You want to dominate him. To mate him, said Buchi. Bowsette glared at her pet playfully. I don't mate with weaklings. I only allow you to share my bed because you're just too good with your mouth and tongue. Bush kissed Bowsette on the cheek. Don't be mad, mistress. I was only teasing. Would you like me to relieve your pressure for you, my mistress? The Queen of the Koopa was tempted to shove the chain-chomp-themed girl's head between her thighs and lick her to completion and force the generals and tribe reps to watch, knowing they couldn't do a damn thing to stop it, but just sit there and watch. She smirked to herself. It wouldn't be the first time she had done it. What the hell, I need some stress relief, thought Bowsette as she firmly yet gently grabbed Bushi's chin and brought her close to her for a kiss. Boom! All conversation and action stopped. An attack on the palace. Buchi jumped off of her mistress as 2 large iron balls with spikes formed on the ends of her wrist cuffs. Bowsette herself rose and ran to where the explosion came from, with the tribal reps and her guards close on her heels. Another explosion. This time she pinpointed it. The room where the blonde was. Buchi, go and secure the area, yelled Bowsette. Buchi jumped over Bowsette and started bounding off the wall with a speed that even Bowsette could only hope to match through Karmak energy. Bowsette smirked. She hoped that Buchi saved her some. Location: Koopa Kingdom. Place: Boswer Fortress Castle Treatment Room. Time: same time as above. No less than 3 monster guards were assigned to guard the boy who their queen was determined to figure out. Each of them stood no shorter than 8 feet tall and muscled like bodybuilders, with bald snake-like heads wearing brown coats that hid the majority of their bodies except their chests and their large hands. Each one also had a rifle in their hands. While they had below-average intelligence, they were still smart enough to use weapons and had a good amount of instinct and natural abilities to back up this ability. As for said queen, she had been here at least once a day for the past week to personally check on him. After day 5 his vitals had stabilized and now, they were just waiting on him to wake up. For a long time, several people thought the boy wouldn't make it, but West was of a different opinion. The door opened and a nurse walked in. She was a full-figured Koopa nurse with reptilian features. She walked to the monitors and read his reading, before writing them down on a sheet of paper. Say what you will about that fungus, but they know how to make medical equipment, said the nurse. The 3 Goomba grunted their agreement. After another few moments, the nurse was finished. She leaned closer to Naruto and looked at him in his face. For a human, he's not bad looking. I wonder what color your eyes are, said the nurse. Said eyes shot open, revealing sapphire eyes. The nurse screamed and backed away from the shock of him opening them. The 3 Goomba turned to Naruto and raised their rifles at him. The young man vanished from his bed and appeared between the Goomba, kicking one of them in his face. The attack bounced off with no real effect. The Goomba grabbed the boy by his leg and threw him through the door. The boy impacted the wall with enough force to break the stones. Cursing to himself, he rose to his feet and flexed his right hand, forcing it to glow blue. He vanished again and appeared before Goomba. Iron Fist style. Strong punch, yelled the boy, hitting the lead Goomba in the face with enough force to shatter his jaw, with enough force to cause a mini explosion. Okay, too much force, thought the boy. As the boy landed, his snorted. Who would have thought that Bushibrow's sensei and Bachan's combined skills would come in handy, thought the boy, before he twisted with the momentum. Iron Fist style. Sky fall, yelled the boy, dropping the kick on the second Goomba. The last Goomba threw away his rifle and wrapped his arms around the boy before he could do anything else. The boy grunted in pain as the monster squeezed his boa contender-like arms tighter with each passing second. The boy gritted his teeth in pain. The Goomba began to laugh. Fucker was enjoying himself. Flexing his right hand, he tried to focus on spinning his inner energy and creating a sphere and surrounding it with a fragile shell. But he had never mastered the attack. But it would have to do. Oh well. He wasn't known as the most unpredictable ninja for nothing. Broken Raisin Gan, yelled the boy, squeezing the orb until it ruptured and exploded. Boom! The Goomba and the boy flew apart from each other and landed on opposite sides of the hallway. The boy groaned in pain as he rubbed his head. His ears were ringing from the explosion and his head pounded. But he was breathing. He opened his eyes, and it was only thanks to his training that he managed to roll out of the way of the fist that had an iron ball attached to it, and impacted the wall where his head had been moments ago. He didn't have enough time to do anything as a strong pair of legs wrapped around his neck and twisted before throwing him. The boy righted himself as he looked at the girl, who was shorter than him. However, he could tell just from the fact that she had managed to sneak up on him was a testament to her skills. He looked around for a weapon and saw a broken piece of metal that was long enough to be a staff. Remembering some of the lessons of Hokage Gigi, he reached for picking up a piece of broken metal that was long enough to be a staff. The boy began to twist it with enough force to tear up the ground. As he thrust it at the girl, Bojutsu, Forest Twister. The girl raised her hands and caught the staff between them. Even though she was pushed back several feet, the girl smiled, showing off many sharp rows of teeth. Not bad, little boy, but not good enough, sang Buchi. The boy then began to make strange signs with his hands. Fire release. Fire ball jutsu, yelled the boy, before unleashing a ball of flames that was big enough to cover the hallway. A red-haired woman opened her mouth and inhaled the flames. Okay, with all the crazy abilities and jutsu he had seen, seeing someone eat flames was a serious problem. While the boy was distracted, 2 large chains wrapped around his body with 2 boulder-sized monsters on either side of him with their mouths open. That wasn't much of a fight, snorted Bowset. You still have to give him credit, said Kamak as he walked up. He managed to defeat 3 Koopa guards after just waking up and even holding back Buchi. Bowset put a hand on her face. Kamak wasn't wrong. Looking to her left, she looked at the royal guards. While they weren't the smartest creatures, they were still strong. All royal guards had to meet strength criteria before they were allowed to serve her and the kingdom personally. Most royal guards often severed complete ties with their tribes and clan and devoted themselves solely to the crown of the Koopa kingdom. I'll admit it was impressive. Boy, tell me your name, said Bowsette. Said the boy, tilting his head to the side. What did you say? Asked the boy. Kamak, Bowsette Bucci, and all present looked at him as if he was stupid. Kamak walked forward. Do you understand me? Asked Kamak. The boy was still confused. Bucci seemed to have a light bulb moment before walking forward and pointing between them, then her mouth and his ear. The boy seemingly got the gesture and shook his head in the negative. He can't understand us. He speaks a different language, said Bucci. Bowsette frowned. This was no good. She wanted to speak with the boy. Kamak, find a way for us to speak with him at once. Everyone else leave, said Bowsette. Kamak nodded and took off, with the others following, most likely to spread the news of what happened. Bowsette walked up to Naruto, and while she was much taller than the boy, he was still a good 5 feet 6 inches and had much growing to do. Bowsette took her thumb and pointed it at herself. Bowsette. Bucci smiled and pointed at herself. Bucci. The boy looked between them before getting the gist of what they were saying. Naruto, said the boy. The queen of the Koopa smiled. Well, Naruto, we're going to have a lot of fun, said Bowsette before she grabbed Naruto by his head and slammed him into the ground. For 2 weeks. It had been 2 weeks since he had woken up and 3 weeks since he arrived in this world. After waking up fighting those Gumas? Whatever they were, and getting knocked out by that red-haired woman who called herself queen, he had been allowed free rein unless Bowsette forbids it. She was strong, almost as strong as Bakun was in terms of pure physical strength. She also demonstrated that she had a mastery of her ability to control her own internal fire. He also quickly figured out that if she was annoyed, she was almost as violent as Sakura. Twice he had met the business end of her fist. The first time was when he was slammed into the dirt right after they met. The second time was when he had caught her and Bucci in a rather intimate position. The reason for the attack wasn't because he had seen them together. The woman had no shame and was proud of how sexy and beautiful her body was. No, her reason for beating the carp out of him was that he caught her in the submissive position, licking Bucci to completion. According to Bucci, someone as powerful and strong as Bowsette shouldn't fear for her position at the top of the kingdom because some outside saw her in a moment of weakness. While she had no qualms about having sex out in the open, she refused to be seen in a position of submission. Speaking of the chain and ball-wielding girl, she reminded him of a very dangerous combination of Ino and Anko. She was a flirt and had no problems teasing him by showing him her boobs. No, Bushi's real danger came in the form of her being as sadistic to her enemies as she was loving to Bowsette. She once casually snapped the neck of a monster from Goomba because he was sleeping on guard shift. He shivered thinking about how freakishly strong those two women were. His life was in constant danger between the duos. Naruto walked through the garden that Bowsette had given him access to. He had been named a VIP of Bowsette for no real reason other than that she found him interesting. After she smashed his head into the ground, she told him that he better get much stronger, because she had all kinds of things planned for her newest pet. A pet? Who does she think she is? Grumbled Naruto himself. She is our mistress, came a voice that he was quickly becoming familiar and quite annoyed with. Naruto turned to see Bucci sitting in the tree petting a bird with a tortoise shell on it. She seemed to be at peace at the moment, but Naruto was stupid enough to let his guard down around her. It was still a bit strange to listen to her voice. Thanks to the earring in his left ear, thanks to Kamak, he was able to understand them, and the choker that forced his vocal cords to produce the correct words in their language. It was uncomfortable, but Naruto could manage until it became natural. What are you doing here? Asked Naruto, glaring at the girl. Bucci smiled. I was spending the day in the garden since Bozy is preparing talks with the other royal and republic delegations in the next month. All of that political stuff is boring, and I don't understand how Bozy puts up with it. Naruto folded his arms. That's politics for ya. Sarutobi Gigi and Tsunade Bakun were always complaining about paperwork and council meetings. What is Bowsette doing anyway? Said Naruto, trying out the woman's name. While it may not have seemed like it's, Naruto actually had an interest in politics. Sure, he may have been a class clown, but he did pay attention to shinobi and civilian laws, regulations, and cross-politics. Honestly, it was part of how he was able to get away with a lot of his pranks, since at the time he was a minor and fell under civilian law. You only became a full adult in the eyes of Konoha by either entering the military at 13 to 14 or at 17 in the civilian sector. She's discussing security, member nations who are going to join, funding, and events that she wants to introduce for the Harmonic Games this year at the end of winter, so that's about 6 months away, said Buchi. Harmonic Games? Asked Naruto. Buchi jumped off the tree and landed before Naruto. Naruto took a step back as Buchi looked him up and down. She circled him. He wore a black short-sleeved shirt, blue jean pants, and burnt orange blazer, and black boots. It wasn't bad, just a plain for her tastes. This looks good on you, Toto. We can do without the orange though, said Buchi. The whiskered blonde glared at her. First off, orange rocks. Second, focus on what I just said Naruto. During the year of Harmonic Games, all kingdoms pray to the gods and goddesses of the world. During the year that the Harmonic Games are held, all wars and conflicts must be put to hold. Even the most hardcore war nuts know better than to attack during a year of Harmonic Games. The other kingdoms would descend on them like a plague and their allies would abandon them to their fate, said Buchi with a bloodthirsty grin on her face. Naruto put a hand on his chin. Sounds a lot like the Chunin exams, only less deadly. Although there is nothing to stop a war other than the nobles pulling their support for the attacking village, thought Naruto, thinking back to that particular clusterfuck where not only did Hokage Gigi die, but 1/8 of the entire Leaf Village forces had died before they could mount a counterattack. So, what are you going to do, Toto? Asked Buchi. Naruto's eye twitched at her nickname for him. She had called him that ever since she learned his name was Naruto. Said Naruto was to be annoying and long to say, and Toto was just too fun to say. Then again, Naruto wasn't strong enough to beat her in a fight. If anything, she was as strong and skilled as Kakashi-sensei was. I'm just wandering around. The rest of the castle is a little too hot for me, said Naruto. Buchi frowned at this. That's boring, Toto. How about we have sex instead? I'm pretty sure Bowsy won't mind if we do it while she works, said Buchi, lifting her the hem of her dress. Naruto blushed at this. He was a teenage guy, so he was always thinking with the wrong head. It was one of the things that Shizen and Tsunade had imprinted on him as part of their The Road training. It had taken Naruto and Jiraiya 2 weeks to find Tsunade and another 2 weeks to return to the village. While they were returning to the village, Shizen, and by extension, Tsunade, decided that Naruto was lacking in sex education. Apparently, it was an old custom that those who were actively going into service learn about sex, and those of a certain age had seduction classes. During the Second and Third Shinobi Wars, they even had a problem where younger shinobi and kunoichi were paired with older ones so they could experience the joys of sex if anything happened to them. That particular program was discontinued when the Third Shinobi War ended, right around the time Naruto was 3 or 4. Naruto only knew about this program because Sarutobi Gigi felt that someone younger needed to know, else the civilian-ran Shinobi Academy program would erase a lot of history. During those 2 weeks outside of the day when Shizen chased Naruto around Hinaja, Tsunade and the times, Jiraiya was around Tsunade supervised Shizen and Naruto in the art of sex and seduction, an art that apparently Tsunade had never taught Shizen. So for 2 weeks, he read books on biological differences between males and females when he wasn't working with Jiraiya on jutsu during the day. At night he was taught seduction by Tsunade and would have to practice what he learned on Shizen and vice versa. While he would admit that Shizune had taught him a few things when they had stayed at the resort as they returned to Konoha, he would later find that, and Tenten was pretty open about likening sex. Despite having a huge crush on Niji, with Tenten it was more or less just two people who had nothing to do and just had some fun. With Shizen he learned, with Tenten it was just fun. It was his final partner that was special to him. He honestly treasured the time he had done the deed with his own first love, Sakura. Despite it being a ploy to clear her own conscience for what she planned to do, i.e. defect with Sasuke, it was still the best time of his life. 1. Despite this, Naruto wasn't so comfortable with the topic of sex, and he wasn't really looking for someone to lose himself in at the moment. He wasn't Erosenin who spent hundreds of ryo on prostitutes. No thanks, I'm not in the mood today, said the blushing blonde. Buchi frowned before she got a sharp-toothed smile. Well, in that case we can play tag, Toto. Tag? Asked Naruto, closing his eyes and tilting his head slightly. Buchi smiled a smile that made Naruto shiver. She jumped at Naruto before raising her leg and kicking at him. Naruto raised his arms in a side block that took most of the impact, but it still felt like his bones had been bruised by her kick. Naruto nearly went to the ground but held firm. Deciding to return the favor, Naruto pulled Bushi's leg forward before punching her in the left cheek. It felt like hitting a steel wall, but with basic Iron Fist style the damage was negligible. In combination with releasing her leg, she went flying into the dirt. Naruto looked at the prone figure of Buchi. Before she rose to her feet, not a scratch on her face indicated that she had been harmed at all. Not a bad punch, Toto. I guess I'm at oh no, leaving the garden. Considering how large it is, we have plenty of space to play. Try not to make this too boring. 10-9-8, said Buchi. Naruto didn't stick around. He jumped into the trees and allowed his shinobi training to take over. He did not want to get caught by the chain loli. I am not a loli. I'm a short stack, yelled the chainlow short shack as a demon appeared behind her as she chased Naruto down. An hour later, Bo West would walk into the garden for a break to find a dirty and bruised Buchi sitting on top of a chained up and squirming Naruto eating an ice cream and burning his clothes. Deciding that she missed nothing interesting, she took her seat by the lake and had her pet bring her some tea. The training pits of the soldiers were just sandy ground on the outside of the palace that had high walls and was outlined by black volcanic bricks. There were several along the northern wall. It was also the closest sparring pit to the royal hallway. All of the training gear they had was makeshift weights and sparring circles. Several Koopa and Goomba frequented this pit in hopes of being the ones to capture her eye. Today was no different, as several soldiers were there, including a captain in the ranks who was from the Blue Shell tribe. He was an Koopa. He was tall and slender, and his hair was slicked backward. He only wore a speedo and his boots to train. This was Spiny. Blue Shells were a powerful tribe, not because of their numbers but because of their ability. Unlike others, Blue Shells were Koopas that had gained the ability to fly. This made them some of the more deadly foes to face. By all accounts, Spiny was the favorite to win Bowset's heart. He was surrounded by his unit, the Winged Serpents, a highly decorated assault unit that had a 97% success in missions. Currently, he and his cronies were posted up next to the sparring pits. They were looking at all of the monsters and regulars sparring and couldn't find it in themselves to care about them. Or at least that would be the norm. His eyes were currently on the talk of the kingdom, Naruto. Naruto was doing pull-ups. Spiny growled before he walked up to Naruto. Hey, Naruto! Yelled the winged Koopa. Naruto stopped what he was doing and dropped down. He disgraced himself and his tribe and clan by wearing baggy black pants and a white muscle shirt. Instead of proudly displaying his body as the rest of them did when training, he hid his magnificence from the world. All Koopa and Goomba showed their magnificence to the world. Proof of their strength and vitality. That wasn't the proud display of a warrior. My name is Naruto, and I got time to dance, said Naruto. Spiny snorted. Warriors don't dance, weakling. We fight, we battle. It's a turn of phase, Jack, said Naruto. Spiny didn't dignify that with a response as he stepped into the circle with Naruto. Naruto began to lightly bounce on his feet. Spiny snorted. No solid stance, way too relaxed, and no warrior's aura. This was going to turn into a bloodbath. Rules? Asked Naruto. No magic, no weapons, bodies only. We go until one of us can't move, said Spiny, getting into a classic grappler stance. Naruto nodded before he took a stance that confused everyone. He stood straight as a board, before putting his left arm behind his back and then his right hand out forward in a knife edge. Spiny growled at the mockery of Koopa grappling style before he charged forward. Naruto ducked the grappling attempt, before using his right hand to swipe Spiny off his feet. Before jumping and putting both his feet to his head, Iron Fist style. Spinning drop kick! Yelled Naruto. Spiny began to spin like a top before hitting the ground. He roared as he jumped to his feet and began to swipe at Naruto. Naruto ducked, backpedaled, and despite how big Spiny was, he was surprisingly fast. Naruto was barely keeping pace with him. Naruto managed to make it to the edge of the arena, before he was booted in his back into the waiting arms of Spiny, who gave Naruto a bear hug. Before tossing him away, Naruto landed on the ground to the cheers of his foe's comrades. Before he rose to his feet, Spiny rushed at Naruto again, and this time managed to slash him across the chest with his claws. Naruto kept the pain in as he took a stance and pulled both hands back. Iron Fist style, double impact! Yelled Naruto, throwing both fists forward. They landed square in Spiny's chest and stomach, making the winged Koopa back up and throw up blood. He glared at Naruto. Before unfolding his wings and rushing at Naruto, he grabbed Naruto in another bear hug. Before flying up into the air and dive-bombing into the ground, barely 10 meters from the ground, he released Naruto, who went headfirst into the ground. Spiny landed on the ground and roared in victory at the approval he was getting from his friends. Only in the roar of public appeal, he failed to notice Naruto pull himself out of the hole. He glared at the man who nearly ended his life. memories flashed in his mind. He chased his best friend and brother-in-arms to the Valley of the End. Sasuke lighting him on fire, burning his skin to a crisp. Sasuke pile driving him into the ground, a broken neck and creaked skull. Sasuke driving a fucking Chidori through this chest twice. Naruto's eyes bleed red. His fingernails turned into half-inch long claws. Rage rushed through his blood. He roared, ignoring everyone, and jumped into the air and crushed Snipey with all of his weight. Once on the ground, he managed to snap one of his wings, making him yell in pain before he rolled them over and gained full mount before he began to rain blows down on Spiny. Spiny throws his arms up in a defensive stance. But Naruto kept punching. Even when his skin opened, his knuckles broke, and blood began flying. After only minutes the haze began to fade when he felt the resistance leave his opponent's body. Naruto looked up from where he was overlooking the prone body of his opponent. His opponent's face was broken, teeth missing. He was moaning in pain. Naruto, the blonde, was panting as he looked around. All around was silence. Raising to his feet, Naruto just felt joy. He had never been a battle nut, far from it. He enjoyed the training and a good scrap. But the taste of battle and blood had never been on his mind. Maybe it was the beginnings of a disordered mind, the curse of madness that all shinobi suffered from of some sort. Who else wants to get these hands? Yelled Naruto, slipping into his native tongue as his sapphire eyes blazing in rage. Everyone who had surrounded the pit backed up. To put down an blue shell was a feat in and of itself. Clapping could be heard. Everyone looked at where the clapping came from and saw Bowset, Buchi, and Kamak standing on the opposite side of the pit near the royal entrance. Keep your eyes on Naruto, honorary member of the Greater Browser Tribe, my champion, announced the Queen of the Kupa with a smirk. Several people turned and looked at the man who had apparently earned Bowset's favor. Location: Kupa Kingdom. Place: Motor Pool. Time: noon. The Motor Pool of the Kupa Kingdom was the central location for a majority of all of the kingdom's advanced vehicles. Rarely in her 3 years of rule has Bowset allowed any of the vehicles to leave unless they were on patrol of the territory or actively engaged in war. This was where those known as the Shais resided. Shais were known to be a quite reclusive race and the known enemies of the Yoshi race. No one knows the reason behind this apparent blood feud. They worked under the Goomba and Koopa races as subservient race, mostly for protection, but because of their skills with machines, weapons, and building, the Goomba and Koopa relied on them. It was more of a symbiosis than an actual master-slash-slave relation. Also, considering that the Shais were allowed to serve in the military but chose to serve as mechanics and techs, didn't spoke volumes about them in the eyes of the Koopa and Goomba. Shais often could be found wearing a red robe with a loose flap on the back of its head, a brown belt with a golden buckle, blue shoes with brown soles, and a white mask with 3 black oval-shaped holes in it, representing large eyes and a small mouth. The mask is secured over the never-seen face of the Shy Guy with a brown strap. The Shy Guy's mask holes move as if it is a real face. However, there were extreme differences between the males and females of the race. Shais didn't get over 3 feet tall, and were quite stocky, being pretty strong for such a short stature. The females of the Shais themselves weren't much taller, only topping around 4 feet tall, but were more lanky. The special garage of the motor pool was the home of the vehicles that would be used in the 10-course racing circuit. A tall Shy gal was working on the vehicles. She was tall for a Shy. Standing at 5 feet 4 inches, she was also model slender as opposed to stocky like most Shais were. Her face was hidden behind the mask that all Shais wore when out in public, but it did little to hide the tufts of turquoise hair poking out her tight red robe that came down to the middle of her thigh, a thick brown belt that was slanted on her hip with a holster and a pouch, white stockings, and blue high-heel boots. This particular Shy gal was named Integra. Not that anyone outside of her people knew this name. Integra was bent over the engine, twisting a ratchet wrench to tighten a bolt that had been loose. Pulling away from the engine, she smiled at her work before backing away and closing the hood of the cart before walking around and cutting it on. She listened to the engine purr with a satisfied smile before she cut it off. She grabbed a towel and wiped her hands before leaving the motor pool. Shais didn't have dedicated working hours like others. They tended to be workaholics and perfectionists. They worked until the job was done with little oversight. Since her job was done, she decided to do something that she did often. She went to the pits to watch the soldiers train. It was actually quite a popular pastime for several females, mostly those who were unmated. Shais didn't have the same mating as Goombas, Koopa, or humans. Shais tended to imprint on someone. It wasn't always a two-way street. so some shies tended to settle for their second choice. As she arrived, she saw several females whispering and talking while giggling. She walked to the rails and bent over to look and see what everyone was looking at. She looked down and saw several Koopa and Goomba males. While Integra could appreciate the Koopa and Goomba muscles and builds, they were not all that attractive to her. She mostly came to the area just because it had one of the better views in the palace. The northern part of the palace faced the frontier lands. She often wondered what the frontier was like. At least that was her normal reason. She felt the urge to look down, and as she did, her eyes caught the sight of a young man. He was taller than her by a good margin and blonde. He was also incredibly fit. If the push-ups he was doing, he transitioned to sit-ups. Integra leaned forward and her mask gained a bit of a smile and blush on her cheeks. She watched him for about 15 minutes before he moved over to do pull-ups. It wasn't long before Spiny made his way over and looked to challenge the blonde to a battle. The fight itself was short and brutal, half of the way Koopa like their fights. If anything, to her there was beauty in the shortness of the battle. In fact, it made the boy stronger in her eyes. The absolutely brutal way he handed his opened, the muscles, the blonde hair, the fire in his eyes, that passion seemed to be embittered in his soul. The power he displayed in the fight. Integra rubbed her thighs together. Oh dear. She went to her knees as her hands went to her masked face. If she could see her own black hole for eyes, she would see that they had turned into hearts. Her heart beat fast just thinking about him. Naruto. Integra knew, she just knew that she had imprinted on that boy, Naruto of the Greater Bowser tribe. Now that she had a name to go with a face, she wondered if he had a military unit under him, or if it was a special task force that worked closely with Queen Bowsette. Either way, Integra planned to apply to serve under her imprinted. Even if he never became a great figure in the kingdom, she would follow him forever. But first, she would return home and change her underwear after an hour or two on her couch with her favorite toy, maybe once in the shower again in her bed, and hope her neighborhood didn't call the local authorities for her screaming again. Naruto's eye wasn't twitching from the mess he was currently in. Naruto wasn't upset with Bowsette for the fact that she had basically publicly announced him as the third most powerful person in the Koopa Kingdom. Naruto wasn't aroused by the fact that Bowsette was naked with Buchi between her legs, making lewd slurping and licking noises, shaking her low call me that and die short stacked tight ass as she enjoyed herself. Naruto wasn't annoyed with Kamak looking at him like he was the scum of the earth for beating his ally to a bloody pulp and putting him out of commission for a few weeks. Nope, Naruto wasn't upset, aroused, or annoyed. He was pissed off, horny, and fed up. Considering Naruto was a breast man and watching. You need to get laid, moaned out Bowsette as her eyes seemed to roll for a second before she focused again. Naruto coughed on his saliva. What? Yelled the blonde shinobi. I can send a few maids to your room to take care of you. You seem a bit backed up. It's not good for a young man to be so stressed out, said Bowsette as she let out a particularly loud moan. I don't need to have sex. What's the matter with you? Yelled Naruto, glaring at Bowsette. Buchi brought her head up. Maybe he's a virgin, said the Chainchomp, licking Bowsette's abs. Why champion Naruto? Sex is a regular part of the Koopa Empire. Several tribal chiefs and clan leaders even have harems, said Kamak. Not the point. Look, you already fucked me over by telling everyone I'm your champion, so let's get down to business. Fine, then you need to build up your team, said Bowsette, smiling at Buchi as she roughly ran her fingers through her hair. Naruto raised a brow at her. What? Asked the blonde shinobi. Bowsette moaned as she grabbed a handful of Buchi's hair and pulled her up. Kamak, explain it to him, I'm going to be busy for the rest of the morning, growled Bowsette before she threw the short stack on the desk and began to kiss and fondle her pet. Kamak cleared his throat. Let us take a walk, champion, said the wizard as they left Bowsette and Buchi to their playtime. As they walked away from the office, he realized that they didn't go far, maybe a room or two away. Kamak took out a key from his robe before he opened the door and allowed Naruto inside of the room. It was rather spacious, not as large as Bowsette or Kamak's offices, but it had basic furnishing: a desk, a few bookshelves, an armor stand, and a couch and coffee table. This is your personal office. As champion of the queen, you must always be close to her or on missions assigned by her. You are also to give her pleasure when told that you must please her. Your secondary title is royal consort. I'm not a day hooker, asshole. Kamak ignored Naruto's creased speech. You are also responsible for overseeing troops. As you have seen, our troops are out a little rough around the edges, but their training is your responsibility now. You are also going to be responsible for patrolling the territories of the tribes and smoothing over any problems. You also have to put together a staff or crew that works directly for you, said Kamak. How am I supposed to put together a staff, and what positions are on this staff? Asked Naruto. Kamak put a hand on his chin. That's normally up to the champion. Each champion has always determined what the positions were called. But considering we haven't had a champion for well over 90 years, it's a bit of a thing to figure out. Oh, the applications have already come in. I'll send someone with them for you too, as well as a royal tailor to get your dress uniform and everyday clothes sorted. We can't have you keep running around in rags, said Kamak. Why don't you tell me how you really feel then, said Naruto with narrowed eyes. Something had been bugging him about Kamak for a while now. In the back of his mind, Naruto for some odd reason always felt like the man was a danger to him. Of course, Buchi and Bowset were dangerous to him as well, but they never felt like they were going to outright kill him. Beat the ever-living crap out of him, sure, but never kill him. Kamak, however, always felt like he was one sarcastic comment away from trying to blow Naruto up. So, Naruto decided to do what he does best and provoke him into making a bad move. The arch-wizard and advisor looked at Naruto with a glare that would have wilted lesser men. Fine then. I don't like you, human. I find your entire race disgusting. All of you are nothing but apes, one rung above the evolution of monkeys. You are nothing but a parasite, if you were not under Bowset's protection, said Kamak. As his hands glowed, he went to raise them but found a knife at his throat. Kamak felt sweat run down his face and back. He hadn't seen Naruto move from his spot, but Kamak had superior senses, not to mention the sixth sense for feeling magic. So for Naruto to be able to get the jump on the 60-year-old Koopa Master Mage said a lot about Naruto's own abilities. Then again, he did beat one of the strongest and naturally gifted of the blue shells. Kamak knew that as powerful as he was magically, his physical abilities for a Koopa were lacking greatly. No need to get nasty. You and I are supposed to be pals now, Kamak-san. And as pals we don't fight each other, we only fight our enemies. You don't want to be my enemy, said Naruto with a tight smile that didn't reach his flicking blue and red eyes. Eyes that Kamak read as move in any way I don't like, and your life is forfeit. Kamak allowed his magic to wane as he raised his hands to show his surrender. Once Naruto was satisfied, he moved the knife away before stabbing it into the desk. Now just a cm or two, but burying the knife halfway into the desk. You are of course right, Champion Naruto. For now, I suggest that you get settled in. You have a lot of work to do before the day is up. I'll have all of the necessary paperwork and items for you within the hour, said Kamak, wiping his face with the back of his sleeve. I need to be careful around him. He's a lot more dangerous than I thought Kamak. Naruto looked at the back of the wizard/advisor and knew that they would probably butt heads a lot over politics, and national and foreign policies. Naruto took a seat at his desk and looked at the desk before he began to rummage through the desk. Nothing of note was there, so Naruto got up and began to do a light workout. Within 15 minutes of him starting, a knock sounded on his door. Naruto stopped his workout and beckoned the person inside. The door opened, revealing several maids and a pair of tailors. Naruto then was measured up, as well as several books filled his shelves, and a tea/coffee set was put on the table. After about 30 minutes everyone left, leaving Naruto with a white silk long-sleeve shirt, a red pair of sparring pants, and a pair of black boots. The rest of his clothes would have to be custom-made, but that would take time. Grabbing a book from the shelf, he looked at the traditional roles that all people in authority had: aides/secretaries, a guard, a military liaison, a strategist, a historian, and a magic user. When technology increased, a driver/pilot was added, as well as a public spokesperson was added. But then again, Naruto was thinking of this in terms of the old ways. In terms of a shinobi, he would need a secretary, a jonin commander, an ANBU commander, a spy master, a liaison between offices, a mechanic, ATI specialist, and a special aide and counsel. He could swing this if he thought of it as him being Hokage. The smirk that adorned his face made several people around the world shiver in fear. Naruto walked over to his desk and looked at the several hundred applications for his staff positions. Naruto sighed. First, he would have to figure out what positions he needed for his own staff. Shadow Clone Jutsu, said Naruto as he and the 5 clones he made moved to the coffee table and began to sort through the papers and figure out how he was going to do his staff. Meanwhile, Naruto moved over to his desk and began to sort through the papers that came with his new and much neglected job. Location: Koopa City Shi's District. Place: Integra's apartment. Time, late noon Friday. Integra panted as she rode out her fourth orgasm of the day. She removed her toy from her honeypot and allowed it to roll on the ground. She wanted to smile at the shaking in her legs, the sweat rolling down her body. She reached over to her table and grabbed the water bottle and guzzled the cooling fluids. Laying down for a few more minutes, she rolled to her side and got to her wobbly legs as she made her way to the bathroom. After cutting on the water and allowing it to war, she stepped in and began to shower. Her mind drifted to her imprinted. Over the last week since Bowsette had announced him as her champion, things had changed significantly in the kingdom, or rather the air about the kingdom had changed. The sparring pits were on edge. All the officers were walking on eggshells, and even the council seemed to be trading water. A knock sounded on her door. Her emotions were not helped by the fact that merely a day after putting Spiny in his place, Bowsette released a newsletter that said that they were accepting applications to Naruto's personal elite team/staff. The application would only be accepted for a week, since it took that long for mail to travel from the furthest corners of the territories. Integra had hurriedly filled out her application and sent it in. It had been almost 2 weeks since then. Naruto hadn't made any public appearances, but rumors had gone out stating that several people who applied had been eliminated from the running. She was hoping that she would get her letter any day now. She needed to know what her imprinted thought. Panicking, she jumped out of the shower and quickly threw a towel around herself and quickly donned her mask before rushing to the door. She opened it to find a Goomba standing there. He held out a sealed envelope and a clipboard. She grabbed said clipboard and signed it, before taking her mail and slamming the door shut. Her face behind the mask was beet red. She had seen the brief flare of lust in his eyes. Ripping off her mask, she grabbed the letter and opened it. Dear Integra Minus, you applied to serve on my staff as my aide/mechanic. I read your resume and application several times, and I am sad to say that the position of mechanic has been filled on my staff by another. However, I am still in need of aid for my staff. Congratulations, you as well as 150 others have passed round 1 of my interview process. Because of the number of people who passed into the second round, I will hold individual interviews 3 days out of the week starting next Monday. Your interview will be Friday. No, that is not a typo or mistake. I will personally take a day of rest after dealing with 50 people per interviewing section. I wish you luck in your interview process. Uzumaki Naruto, champion of the Koopa Kingdom. P.S. On a personal note, I like your smile. You shouldn't hide behind your mask so much. Integra read the letter several times before she grinned and jumped up and down with her massive chest jiggling. She managed to make it to the second round of hiring. She was going to make sure that her beloved hired her. But that was Monday. It was Friday, and the letter had ignited a new fire in both her belly and loins. She would get that position and have her imprinted fall in love with her. She would be by his side like nobody else. Now, where had she thrown her dildo? The Mushroom Kingdom was one of, if not the most prosperous kingdoms in the world, with only the Egg Empire rivaling it in resources and the Koopa Kingdom in military might. Sitting on several thousands of miles of lush and fertile lands, to the south of the Mushroom Kingdom was the 200 or so miles of borderlands that separate them from the Koopa Kingdom. Some form or magic or another keep the skies around the kingdom from reflecting the everdark skies of the Koopa Kingdom. Despite how small her military was, only about 50,000 full-time soldiers and another 40,000 in the local militas scattered across the country. Princess Peach Toadstool was a formidable opponent on and off the battlefield. Her cunning mind and battle skills were only surpassed by her baking skills. Princess Peach was considered to be the most beautiful woman in the world, with her cousin Daisy as number 2 and Bowsette as number 3. Peach was tall for her age. Sapphire blue eyes, standing at about 5 feet 5 inches, with a figure that was to die for Coke bottle figure. Wearing a Victorian-age pink dress with a sapphire brooch on her chest. A light shade of pink lipstick adorned her lips. She was currently in a call with her little cousin, Daisy. Normally they would talk using their cell phones, but this was a matter of state, so they had to use the built-in landlines. Personally, Peach didn't have too many state secrets that she wanted to keep, but this champion of the Koopa Empire was classified as a threat level yellow. Not an immediate issue, but one that would have to be solved soon. I still can't believe it, Peach. That crazy bitch finally chose a champion. I mean, I didn't think we'd ever see it in our lifetime. Speaking of which, did you get the package I sent you? It has some pretty juicy stuff in it, cuz the champion is even cute to boot. I'd take him for a ride any day of the week, said Daisy. By the gods, you're such a slut. First you fucked the champion of New Donk City, Jumpman the Conqueror Mario, And I know for a fact you had sex with his older son. What's next, you plan on fucking the brother too? Said Peach, slightly annoyed with her cousin. 1-2. If the shoe fits, or in this case the cock, said Daisy with a slutty tone of voice. Peach wanted to shake her head. Peach reached across her desk and pulled out the paperwork that had been mailed to her, information that had slipped the creeks of the Koopa Kingdom. For over a month she had heard rumors of Bowsette taking in some boy, a political refugee? A mercenary? She didn't know, nor did she care. With the harmonic games coming up, all her focus needed to be on selecting the best teams for the games. Reaching into the envelope, she pulled out the information. Everything that they had managed to gather on the champion of the Koopa Kingdom. She wasn't going to lie and say that the champion wasn't cute, but her heart was set on the young man she wanted to make her champion, Marito Jumpman Mario. Then again, his brother was unsoiled. Their intelligence on him was limited at best. No records from New Donk, Mobius, the Egg Empire, or Sarasaland. He was a ghost in the system, so to speak, an enigma that could throw everything off. His skills were the real deal, as he had defeated the leader of the Winged Serpents. But then again, their success rate for missions was always in the borderlands. Only twice had they managed to complete a mission on her borders, making for a 99% defense rating in her people's books. Honestly, even with how powerful the Koopa Kingdom's military was, they were unorganized and undisciplined, a threat on a smaller scale. During the days of King Koopa 70 years ago, he was a warmonger, and made things quite difficult to beat. This new guy might change that. I'll have to pay a visit to the Koopa Kingdom in a week or so, just to make sure that nothing unfounded or unwanted is afoot, said Peach. You sneaky bitch! You have something planned, don't you? Asked Daisy with quite a bit of excitement. Peach smiled. Now that would be telling love, said Peach. Location: Koopa Kingdom. Place: Bowser Palace, Naruto's office. Time: midday. A groan of pleasure escaped the champion of the Koopa Kingdom's lips. Bucci was messaging his neck, back, and shoulders. The last week had been trying for him. While he had set aside dates for the interviews for his staff, his entire week had been nothing but meetings and the like. Meetings with tribe officials, meetings with generals and admirals, meetings with territorial leaders. Bowsette wasn't any help, since she had all but told Naruto that if she had to deal with bullshit, then so was he. It was also one of the reasons that Bucci was currently on loan to him until he got his staffing done. According to her, she only had 3 staff members: Kamak, her advisor, Naruto, her champion and the head of her military outside of herself and Kamak, and Bucci, her personal maid, pet, secretary and bodyguard. The little chain-chomp filled many roles. How are you feeling, Toto? Asked Bucci. Exhausted, said Naruto as he rose to his feet and looked at all the applications that had come in. Out of the 50 that he interviewed, the staff was going to be a tough challenge. I have to turn these 7 individuals into the core of the Koopa Kingdom's military/political and internal politics infrastructure. A job I'm handling after many years of neglect. Bucci gave Naruto a kiss on the cheek. Yeah, it may take time, but you got this, Toto, said Bucci with a smile. Thanks, Bucci, said Naruto, enjoying her encouragement. She got off of Naruto's back, allowing him to stand up and roll his shoulders. Naruto walked over to his desk and began to go over the paperwork again. Bucci took a stance behind him to help him out with his duties. Oh, that reminds me, Bowsy wants to speak with you when you have completed all your duties today, said Bucci. Naruto looked at her. This was probably the first official summons that Naruto had received since coming here. Normally he just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Unlike Kamak, who seemed to keep to a busy schedule, Bowsette did what she wanted when she wanted. At times he thought that she was just being lazy and shirking her duties. Okay, coinciding I won't be done till late tonight. It's gonna suck for me, said Naruto. Bucci smirked. Then you'd better get done what you can, Toto. You got a lot of paperwork to complete, said Bucci as 2 maids brought in 2 large stacks of papers. Naruto sighed in annoyance before he made a familiar hand sign. Shadow clone jutsu, said Naruto. He wondered how pissed Swan the Bakon would be as she never figured out this. Location: Koopa Kingdom. Place: Bowsette's room. Time: late evening. Bowsette brushed her hair in the mirror as she prepared for bed. Today had been rather annoying as the tribe councils wanted to discuss some changes to the military operations. She didn't know why she was already spending quite a sum for the Egg Empire to update their communications. Kamak also seemed to push for an update to the communications despite him normally being firmly in support of the council. That meant that he was playing at something. The queen would gladly admit that Kamak was smarter than her, but she wasn't stupid enough to not notice what he was up to. A light tapping sounded on her door. She knew that it wasn't Kamak or Buchi, as they either had permission or didn't care. Setting her brush down, she turned to the door. "Enter," she said. The door opened, revealing Naruto in a pair of pants and a robe. "Evening, Bowsette. I was doing final checks before heading to sleep," said Naruto. She snorted. "I don't know whether to be impressed at your foresight or disappointed that you didn't come here to blow my back out," said Bowsette as she grabbed a drink. Naruto raised a bow at this. "Why don't you just ask Buchi to tongue you like always, or order me to do it?" asked Naruto. Naruto took a seat on the couch in her room. "Then why all the semi-public sex?" asked Naruto. "I'm the queen of one of the most powerful militaries in the world. I'm expected to sire a few children. Me having semi-public sex with another woman isn't something that anyone will fuss over, unless I do it in front of other world leaders." "That makes sense. You still didn't answer my question. Why haven't you just ordered me to do it?" asked Naruto. Bowsette got up and walked over to Naruto. Before straddling his waist, before Naruto could say anything, she gripped his hair tight and forced his head back and kissing him in a bruising hard kiss. Naruto's hands went to her plump rear and squeezed it. The meaty backside gave way to strong fingers. A moan escaped from the queen of the Kupa. She pushed her long snake-like tongue out her mouth and used it to force it into his mouth. She explored all corners of his mouth. He tasted good to her. Pulling away from him, she smiled at the saliva bridge that connected their tongues together. "I can wait. Go drown in endless lust. Fuck as many bitches and whores as you like, knowing that one day you'll come crawling to me. To fuck? No, we won't fuck. We won't make love. We're going to break each other's minds with the pleasure that we'll give each other. Until then, be my warrior and champion of my kingdom," said Bowsette as she rose from his lap and went to her bed. Naruto swallowed the spit that was in his mouth and couldn't help but nod. "Good, now get the hell out of my room. I need my beauty sleep. Oh, if you see a handmaiden, feel free to take her for a ride to drain those balls of yours," laughed the Koopa Queen. Naruto got up and walked out of the room, slamming the door behind him. He really needed release. As he walked down the hallway, he saw a few of the homunculus maids walking around the palace. All of them are creations of alchemy, apparently. Homunculus maids and butlers were sold commonplace around the kingdoms. They were created to be energetic, durable, lived long lives, didn't age, and most of all loyal. Since they worked directly for the person they were imprinted on, they were all ready and willing to take whatever orders Naruto gave, considering that they were all imprinted with the heads of the Koopa Kingdom as their masters. The maid that he was currently eyeing was quite beautiful. She was shorter than Naruto by a good bit, maybe 5 feet 5 inches, large D-cup breasts, and long blonde hair that seemingly shines mysteriously, just like starlight shining from the stars. And she also wears eyeglasses. "You girl!" growled Naruto. The maid in question stopped what she was doing and bowed. "Yes, Champion Naruto," said the glasses-wearing maid. "What is your name?" asked Naruto. "Lumiere, Champion Naruto, what do I need to assist you with?" said the maid. "3. Follow me to my quarters, and be prepared to stay the night," said Naruto. The screams and moans heard that night kept many in the palace up, most in annoyance, but one in pure excitement. Oh, how Boest couldn't wait to see the look of pleasure and lust on her champion's face. Kamak's personal room/office was filled with tomes of magic, historical books, a cauldron, and shelves full of jarred ingredients. His desk was pushed up against the with a stack of papers and books on it, and a single light by the candle. Kamak growled in annoyance as he read over reports that had come from the generals in the borderlands. They had been having problems setting up the fortress in the borderlands thanks to a number of things. Next, the soldiers in the area were running into problems from the Gerudo warrior tribes. A bunch of warrior women who didn't abide by the rules of the harmonic games and had been pests in the past. The Hyrule Kingdom was supposed to deal with them, but they were failing in their duties in keeping those thieving vixens at bay. Then again, he couldn't really blame them as he was having problems himself. Bowsette was old enough to breed, and the Koopa/Goomba tribes were growing more and more restless each time she refused a mate. They didn't care if she fucked her pet in chambers, so long as she learned her place when she finally took a mate. She was the first female ruler in over 400 years, a fact that was not lost on any of the other tribes, and she was the last of the Greater Bowser tribe and Lesser Bowser clan made her a highly sought-after mate. Already the strongest tribe, the Greater Blue Shell tribe, wanted to integrate the Bowser blood into their tribe. The union needed to happen, but Bowsette was too strong to be defeated by anyone. Everyone pinned their hopes on Spiny to catch her eye, or at least be strong enough to bind her to his will, at least until he was beaten by a human. A human who their queen had named champion. That was not supposed to happen. A human should be nothing more than a test dummy. Sweeping the books and papers off of his desk, he roared his rage. He raged for a moment before he stopped. Breathing hard, Kamak swiped his head back and straightened his robes. Looked at his scattered paperwork and books. He would have a maid clean it later. Perhaps it's time I consulted the Church of Medusa. Better the devil than a human, in my opinion, thought Kamak, as he walked over to the door. He opened the door and heard the screams of a woman. Pleasured screams. Sighing in annoyance, he cast a spell on his ears to keep the sound from reaching his ears as he made his way to the church. Location: Koopa Kingdom. Place: Naruto's room. Time: early morning. Danger! Naruto jumped up, grabbed the person who was over him by their throat, and rushed them to the opposite wall. Raising his hand, he summoned a Rasengan, and was about to drill it into their face before he stopped. The person he had pinned to the wall was a young woman, a beautiful one at that, standing at a height of around 5 feet 8 inches with a slender frame that was built for acrobatic combat, and most likely magical combat. A long, blue ponytail, pink eyes, and eyeshadow, wearing a golden ring to decorate her and seemed to allow it to stay in its ponytail, a light blue and purple corset that seemed to reveal a lot of skin on her shoulders, the valley between her breasts and navel, with stockings and sleeves to match. On her back was a double-bladed sword. Her hands were up, and her face held a grin. "Easy, master, I'm not here only to fulfill my duties," said the young woman, easily a few years older than Naruto. "Then speak, before I grind you to paste," growled Naruto. "My name is Pandora, or if you need my official title, Amazon Pandora, warrior priestess of the Medusa goddess Set," said the woman. Naruto released his Rasengan. He hadn't thought that the Koopa worshipped anything but combat, but then again, he praised the log, and someone called the Sage of Six Paths. Maybe it wasn't so strange that they had religion. "Why are you in my room?" asked Naruto. Pandora snorted. "The Archbishop of our church has ordered me to act as your official liaison between the church and yourself. In short, I work with you on behalf of the church," said the blue-haired young woman. Naruto narrowed his eyes. That wasn't one of the positions on his staff. Then again, if the church had any sort of power in the kingdom, he would need their support for the future. He didn't underestimate the power of religion and a people's love. Not after the Spring Country mission and the cult of Jello. Religious zealots were one thing Naruto wanted to avoid. Fighting for a cause always made people more dangerous. Having her on his side would be risky. "Okay, what time is it?" asked Naruto. "It's a bit after sunup, master," said Pandora. "Let me get showered and dressed," said Naruto. "Do you want me to take care of that for you, master? It looks rather painful?" asked Pandora, looking down. Naruto finally noticed that he had a hard-on. Even after everything he had done with Lumiere, he was still horny. It's even encouraged that we take priests and bishops as lovers, of course. Considering that most of them aren't my type, I've rarely had sex with any of them. The bishops during rituals and harvests. But nothing past my duties, so what do you say? Asked Pandora with a lust in her eyes that made Naruto want to break her. "Come put those lips to good use," said Naruto. Pandora fell to her knees before Naruto before opening her mouth. Naruto himself wouldn't realize it until later in life. But his burning lust for Bowset, coupling with the maid, and then Pandora's attention was the start of his downfall to darkness. Location: Koopa Kingdom. Place: East Wing Meeting Room. Time: later morning. The room that the members of Naruto's staff had been directed to be a large meeting room in the eastern wing of the palace. Already the room was filled with the 8 people that Naruto had selected to be his staff. Already they were rowdy as heck. Integra was nervous as she looked at the other 6 people in the room with her. All of them were going to be staff like her. Each of them was like her, was handpicked by Naruto. She saw only one other female on staff with her. She had a Coke bottle figure, but had a good deal of muscle on her, especially her legs, and her breasts were large, long strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes, alongside a reptilian tail, wearing a green knee-length dress, pink high heels, a pink pearl necklace, and a pink bow on the edge of her tail. The door opened as a woman walked in. She wore a full-body robe that covered everything but her face. "Presenting the hand-selected champion of the Koopa Kingdom, Master Naruto," said the woman. Naruto entered the room. He wore black pants, white armor, arm guards, and matching boots. Over this, he wore an orange clock with the Koopa Kingdom emblem on the back. He walked around to the head of the table and took a seat with the woman standing behind him. "As we have much to do in the coming weeks, this meeting will be brief. You all received letters stating your positions and what I expect of you, but I want you to introduce yourselves to each other. Please leave your clan and tribe names out of who you are, and I will explain why in a moment. We will go from my right to left. Standing up was easily the largest of the Kupa there, easily standing at 8 feet 2 inches. He was signified with a star on the left side of his face, dark skin compared to the others, and a black shell. My name is Morten Jr., according to the letter sent to me by Champion Naruto. I will be leading the vanguard forces once things have been finalized, said Morten. The next to stand up was a smaller Humanian Kupa. He was only 5 feet 7 inches. His blue mohawk made him taller than he was. Name's Larry. I'll be acting as the quartermaster for our little group. Supplies and requisitions will come through me. The second largest Kupa stood up. Unlike Morten, his head was pink and he wore pink glasses with a classic Kupa frame and skin. I'm Roy. I'll be overall in charge of troops on the battlefield when Champion Naruto isn't around. Next came a smaller Kupa, but with simply crazed eyes, and a green stalk of hair. My name is Iggy. I'll be running our RD division and motor pool alongside working closely with the magic division. Next came a young man with his hair split into a classical look, and he dressed in a compressed suit, but a single fang could be seen poking out the front of his mouth. Ludwig von. I will be the leading strategist and head of the special forces. Finally was the other girl. How are you doing, Suga? I'm Wendy O, and I'll be your intelligence operative director. Treat me nice and I'll treat you well, said Wendy with a wink. Integra looked at the others and signed out who she was. I'm Integra Minus. I'll be Champion Naruto's personal aide, signed Integra. I am Amazon Pandora. I'll be the Crutch's liaison. I was added last minute by the Archbishop and at Advisor Kamak's request. Naruto raised a brow at this but said nothing. He would file it away for later. He would definitely need to speak with her in private about this. It boggled his mind that he didn't think to ask her who had assigned her to his group. He had honestly thought that it was Bo West in a bid to gain favor with the religion in her country. But obviously she didn't care about that at all, it seemed. Hi, Champion Naruto, head of the military. Despite the fact we have several generals and admirals in the kingdom, I will be going over everything they want, say or do with a fine-tooth comb. Only Queen Baoset and Advisor Kamak can overrule me. When in official formation I ask that you refer to me as champion. My goal is to fix the military. To do that we will start on a smaller scale. Our first mission/goal is to gather up enough supplies and soldiers for an experimental training force that will take place over the course of a month. This training is a proof of concept. I'll leave the logistics up to you all, but I'll be want daily reports until the training is finalized, said Naruto. Yes, champion, said everyone. Another thing, you are all from different clans or tribes. But that is no more. Your names are from this day forward Kupa, all under the banner of the kingdom. You work for the kingdom and do everything for the kingdom. You will meet me at the end of each day for the next 2 weeks to go over your reports on your progress. You have 2 weeks to finish the prep for this mission. Get it done. As of this moment, Integra and Pandora are to consistently be by my side as my right and left hand respectfully. If you can't get to me directly, then give the information to them, said Naruto. Yes, champion, said the others with Wendy Okupa glaring slightly at Integra and Pandora. Dismissed, said Naruto raising from his feet. Integra looked at Naruto with hearts in her eyes. So cool. Location, Konoha. Place, Konoha Hospital. Time, noon. The city-state of Konoha was said to be the strongest military power in the elemental nations. The millet power of the land of fire, ruled by the Hokage, the strongest shinobi or kunoichi in the village. With the exception of Sarutobi Hiruzen and Namikaze Minato, Konoha had always been under the command of the Senju clan, a fact that the civilian council was desperately trying to hide. The current leader of Konoha was Senju Tsunade, the fifth Hokage. Tsunade, despite being in 50s, looked like she was in her late 20s, early 30s. She wasn't very tall, maybe 5 feet 6 inches, with some of the biggest breasts in Konoha, being H-cup, long blonde-haired, hazel eyes, and a black and red diamond tattoo on her forehead, wearing a gray kimono top with no sleeves, green hori with the kanji for gamble on it, and a pair of black-heeled sandals, the kind that only truly skilled kunoichi wore. Tsunade threw the doors to the hospital open. She ignored the civilian staff as they sang her false praises. How could she care for those who hated her son? It wasn't long before she came to the office of her elder student, niece of her deceased lover, and adopted daughter, Kodo Shizen, the poison lily of Konoha. While many people would dismiss Shizen because she was a medical ninja, they would be shocked to discover that out of all of Konoha's kunoichi, Shizen would rank as number 3rd. fourth or fifth strongest with only Tsunade and Sim. The only two kunoichi that could contend for those spots was Midorishi Anko, who had once been trained by her teammate Orochimaru, or the prodigy swordswoman, Yuzuki Yugao. Tsunade sighed as she entered the hospital room. She looked at her disciple with a pained smile. Shizen was laying on a bed with a towel on her head and N4 hooked to her arm. While she never thought it about herself, Shizen was a very beautiful woman. Fair-skinned woman of average height and slender build with onyx eyes and jet black hair. Her hair is straight and shoulder-length with bangs that cover her ears and frame her face. Wearing a long bluish-black kimono with white trimmings, held closed by a white obi, and open-toed sandals with low heels. Tsunade had been in a meeting with the elders when one of her ANBU entered the room and told her that Shizen had collapsed in the hospital. It shouldn't have really been a shock to Tsunade. For the last 14 years Shizen had only focused on taking care of her drunkard of an adopted mother. She had sacrificed her life for Tsunade's. So when that new brat had joined Jiraiya in finding her, she knew who he was. It was Kushina and Minato's brat. Or rather her and Minato's brat. Like all female Jinchuruki, Kushina had problems get pregnant. But Tsunade had donated her own eggs to help her little cousin get pregnant and sire a child. Tsunade herself had lost the desire to have children after Dan's death. Regardless of the number of times her and Jiraiya had sex, and claimed that she would be the perfect mother to his children. To her it was just sex, a release of oxytocin and endorphins, nothing more, nothing less, feel-good natural drugs. Hell, she spent years traveling, drinking, gambling, and having sex with men of all kinds, nobles, samurai, yakuza, and others of the like of she was pretty picky being a medic, so over the years outside of Jiraiya she had maybe had about 30 lovers. More nightlight stands than anything over the last 15 years. But then again, compared to the 100 or so prostitutes that Jiraiya had slept with, that was nothing. Opening the door to the office of the head medical ninja, Tsunade smiled as she saw said adopted daughter working on some papers. Shizen was a pretty woman, beautiful even if she didn't think much of her own appearance. A consequence of having Tsunade, who had once been Konoha's most beautiful kunoichi in her late teens to early 30s. Her eyes were black as shoulder-length hair, and bountiful C-cup breasts, wearing a black kimono and flats on her feet. Working hard, Shizen? Asked Tsunade. Shizen looked up from her work and went to rise to her feet. As she did, Tsunade got a good look at 5-month-old swollen belly. She was carrying Naruto's child. Despite Tsunade warning the duo time and time again to be careful, Shizen had forgotten to take her contraception after a rather vigor love-making session with Naruto after the Land of Spring mission, which got them a very powerful ally. Tsunade-sama, I didn't expect you to be here, said Shizen. Tsunade walked over to Shizen and eased her back into her chair. Please don't get up on my account. You have to take care of yourself and the baby, said Tsunade. Shizen nodded as she placed her hand over her stomach. Uzumaki births were always high risk because of the Uzumaki's strong chakra. Added with the fact that Naruto was a freak even among the Uzumaki when it came to chakra. Shizen's baby was messing with her chakra network, taking almost half of her chakra daily. I finished my paperwork and decided to see if you were free for lunch, said Tsunade. I could use a bite to eat. This child of mine is making me hungry all the time, said Shizen, putting a hand on her stomach. While she herself had never experienced childbirth, she had delivered several children over the years. And while it may seem strange, she did have a son, or rather she donated her eggs to her god sister and cousin, allowing her to give birth to her son. Sure, what are you in the mood for? Asked Tsunade. Negi, I haven't had that in a while, and maybe some ramen, said Shizen with a smile. Tsunade sighed as she helped Shizen up and prepared to leave. Kushina-chan, Minato Gaiki, I'm sorry I failed our son. I won't fail our grandchild. Bowsette stood with Kamak, Naruto, and a small platoon of Koopa stood at the royal docks. She had received various messages from her allies as well as Peach that they would. So here she was alongside her two most powerful / important people in the kingdom by her side. They watched as a small airship bearing the royal crest of the Mushroom Kingdom came into view. Two larger escort ships could be seen flying forward, and to its rear, another larger ship could be seen flying from the west. A more recognizable ship, large and heavily armored warship with a red, yellow, dark gray, and white-colored hull. It consisted of a long and pointy bow with a red metal cover over its main cannon. The ship also had a fairly large and open deck and the Robotnik Empire's decal emblazoned on it. There was one last ship that was coming in. It was more dilapidated than the others, in an older style of ship. Kamak pushed his glasses up. My lady, I was aware of Princess Peace's arrival, but not Lady Robotnik's, Queen Bed's ships. I did not expect this. You should have told me, whispered Kamak harshly into Bowset's. Naruto sighed. Bad move, buddy, whispered the Koopa Kingdom's champion. Bowset's arm shot out like a cobra's and fingers of steel wrapped around her advisor's neck. I don't have to tell you anything I don't feel like telling you. Your role is to advise me in all matters of ruling the kingdom. Am I understood? Asked Bowset. Kamak choked and gasped for air while trying to pry her steel-like fingers and blade-sharp nails off his neck, but nodded to her as best he could. Bowset released him, allowing him to gasp for air and straighten up as Queen Boo's ship landed in one of the ports. Several ghosts could be seen, and it took all of Naruto's willpower not to freak the fuck out. He was scared of ghosts, had been since the creepy snake lady used to babysit him for pocket change from Hokage. Her idea of babysitting was to tell a 4 to 7-year-old ghost stories, and then cuddle with him when he was too scared to go into his own bed for fear of ghosts. The woman who descended from the ship was beautiful in the way it was almost creepy. She wasn't tall, being only 5 feet 5 inches with a curvy figure with large C-up breasts. But that wasn't what stood out to Naruto aside from the fact that she was a ghost. Her skin was pale, death pale, red eyes, and a row of sharp teeth. Her face was angular and beautiful, waist-length white hair that seemed to have a purple tint to it. She wore what could amount to a silk, skin-tight white wedding dress that flared out from her hips, that reached just below her ankles, white gloves, a red and gold pendant around her neck, and a gold crown. Bowset smiled as the other woman landed in front of her. Queen Bet, welcome to the Koopa Kingdom, said Bowset with a curtsy. Bet smiled and returned the curtsy. Queen Bowset, it has been a while since the Phantasm Principality has graced these lands, said the ghost woman. Naruto's jaw nearly dropped. He hadn't known that Bowset could put on a true royal act. This was quite different from the rude and prideful woman he saw every day. The two stopped curtsying to each other before they embraced. It has been ages, said Bowset. But laughed. Please, if 3 months is ages to you, then what have the last 200 years been to me, little Bowser, said Bled. Bowset blushed. Please don't call me that, QB, said Bowset. But laughed. Still the same kid that I met all those years ago, said Bled as she looked at Bowset though. And you still the same creepy bitch you've always been, Bled. Bled frowned and turned to glare at the person who said something. Empress Ivara Robotnik, I didn't think you'd be here. It was a woman who was in her mid-20s, and built differently. She wasn't slender like Bet, nor was she muscular like Bowset. Instead, she was thick, as in her breasts were large in the G-cup range, and while she was a little chubby around the waist, it was curved to be beautiful. Red coats sporting 2 square metal buttons on both sides of the chest in gold. These buttons have white straps that run across the coat's sides to identical buttons on the back. The coat also has silver, zipper-like linings down the back, arms, and front, yellow cuffs, and 2 extensions on the front that have large silver buttons. In addition, white, cuffless gloves on her hands and a black mini skirt that came just below her behind, with matching thigh-high boots, and a pair of blue curricular glasses. Ivara smiled a cruel and nasty smile. Mobius is in a state of peace thanks to the harmonic games, though I guess they call themselves the Free Alliance now, is currently in talks for a border territory. My little sister is better at playing nice than I am, so I left her in charge of playing politics while I focus on my research. Next to her was a young man. If Naruto ever thought Sasuke had an even more evil-looking emo twin, then this guy was it. He was as tall as Naruto, and built like an Olympic-class runner. He had black hair that reached the middle of his back with red highlights, and red eyes, a black leather jacket with red lines on the sleeves and a white fur collar, black cargo pants that were tucked into white and black armored shoes, a white belt with a holster, white gloves, and gold rings around his wrists. In the holster were a pistol and 3 clips of ammo attached to his belt. You pulled me from protecting Maria for this? My time would be better spent training if I was getting pulled from my post, said the young man. Ivara smirked. Please, Shadow, you are the champion of the Eggman Empire under my authority. The only reason I allowed you to even stay as Maria's guard is that you two have been fooling around without my consent, said Ivara. Shadow narrowed his eyes. Before he drew his gun and fired off a bullet, Ivara didn't move from her spot, but the bullet was cut in half and went flying in different directions. Naruto looked at Shadow before he rushed Shadow. Shadow raised his pistol, blocking Naruto's short sword. Sparks flew as the duo struggled for control. He's as strong as me, Shadow and Naruto thought at the same time. The duo pushed energy into their respective weapons before they were blown back. Naruto skidded to a halt, while Shadow hovered in the air. Shadow growled before he vanished and appeared in front of Naruto with the gun in his face. But Shadow felt the cold steel of Naruto's blade on his neck. Either moved, glaring at each other. "Oh! He's good, Bowsette," said Bet. "Oh, your champion was much better than I thought he was." His reaction speed rivaled Shadow's, his strength as well, not as fast as Shadow, clearly trained in bladed weapons, and he's more my type. "Would you like to trade?" asked Ivara Data, dancing across her glasses. Bowsette shook her head and chuckled. "Not a chance, slut." "But out, kid, this doesn't involve you," said Shadow, leveling his gun at Naruto. "Are you insane? Attacking someone for an insult?" Ivara laughed. "It's true, he and my sister have such a lovely romance. They love each other so, but have a problem saying they love each other. Were he not the champion of the Eggman Empire, I wouldn't have a problem with them sneaking around and having sex," said Ivara. Shadow blushed. "Maria and I don't have that kind of relationship, Ivara," growled Shadow. "Oh, isn't that cute? You're a virgin, my bad. I thought you and Maria would have already boned since you two are always in the geofront in the Egg Fortress," laughed Ivara. Shadow glared at her and pointed his pistol at her, only for a fireball to hit him in the hand, knocking the gun away. He looked over at the person responsible, as did everyone else. The person was a man, a little older than Naruto and Shadow, standing at 5 feet 9 inches, a bit rotund, with blue eyes, brown hair, and a mustache. He wore a pair of denim blue overalls, a long-sleeve red shirt, a pair of white gloves and brown working boots, and a cap that had a white circle with M in the center. In his right hand was another fireball ready to let loose. "That's enough," said the man. "Great, another goody two-shoes." "Who's the fat guy?" asked Naruto. The fat guy in question glared. "The name is Mario and I'm not fat. It's all muscle here, cat," said Mario. Naruto narrowed his eyes. "I'm not a cat, if anything I'm a fox," said Naruto. "And I'm going to kill you both," said Shadow. The trio sized each other up, but before they could attack, a barrier appeared before them, stopping them. They each looked at where the barrier came from and saw a figure descending from the Mushroom Kingdom ship with her hand raised. "That is enough!" yelled the Princess Toadstool. "What am I to deal with? Mario, I ordered you to stop them, not join their pointless fight. You two should also be ashamed of how you acted, Champion Shadow, Champion Naruto." Mario paled. "Sorry, Princess," said Mario as he went to one knee. "Don't chastise me, lady. How I deal with Ivara's bullshit is none of your business. I couldn't kill her if I wanted, and last time I checked you have no control over me," said Shadow. "I was doing my job, so keep it to yourself, Mushroom," said Naruto with narrowed eyes. The Mushroom Princess glared at Naruto. "She's strong, at least as strong as Granny in the chakra department," thought Naruto. "Agreed," came a voice from the back of his mind. "Kyubi?" asked Naruto. "This connection won't last long, so shut up and listen, boy. The duo before you are both stronger than you by a good margin. If they wanted to hurt you, you'd be dead. I recommend learning to use my chakra to its fullest before dash," said Kyubi before the connection cut. Ivara smiled before she picked up the gun. "I was never worried about Shadow hurting me," said Ivara as she put the gun to her head and pulled the trigger. The projectile left the chamber and impacted a force field of some kind. "Kinetic barrier?" "I should have known," said Shadow. "Now that all of that is over, can we be shown to our rooms?" "The trip was quite tiring," said Peach. Bowsette sighed. "Fine, guards escort our guests to their rooms." As everyone was escorted away, Shadow and Mario all stopped in a functional triangle, staring at each other. Naruto looked at Mario, Mario looked at Shadow, and Shadow looked at Naruto. None of the young men wished to back down. It was a pride thing. Mario was the first to relent as he followed his princess to their room. He didn't need to waste his time with the likes of two weaklings. No, he'd much rather spend his time eating at Peach's cake. He hoped she brought the ingredients for it. Shadow followed after Ivara, bumping his shoulder into Naruto's. Naruto kept his cool, but he wanted to end that edgelord. As he prepared to leave, Naruto looked at Queen Buette. Out of the 3 ships that came, she was the only one who didn't have a champion. "Queen Buette dash," started Naruto. "Kyubi, call me Kyubi. My race is called Boo. Being called Buette is kind of annoying," said Kyubi, sticking her tongue out in a teasing manner. Naruto nodded. "Kyubi, why don't you have a champion?" asked Naruto. The Ghost Queen floated in the air. "To be honest, my kingdom doesn't really need a champion. We live on the fringe of the Koopa Kingdom, but we aren't really members of the kingdom itself. I'd say we're about 1/20th the size of the Koopa Kingdom. My own military is maybe 10 ships in our entire fleet, and maybe 4,000 troops. We exist under the Koopa Kingdom as an ally state. As far as I'm concerned, we don't need a champion, said QB. Naruto nodded. I understand, QB. Kamak, Naruto, if you'll excuse me, I wish to speak with QB for a bit, said Bowsette, grabbing QB's hand and dragging her away. Where are they heading? Asked Naruto. Kamak shrugged his shoulders. I tried to stay out of their way. With so many combustible elements in this castle, I will have my hands full as it is, said Kamak. What do you mean? Asked Naruto. Kamak looked at Naruto. That is a long tale and needs a proper setting. Follow me to my office. Considering you are not from this world, you probably don't know about all the combustible elements and powers of this, said Kamak. Is it that bad? Asked Naruto. We're going to be drunk by the end of it all. As much as I dislike you, I need you to understand this world. I think it's time I told you about the gods, goddess, and powers that govern this world, said Kamak.